This is in regard to the proposed censure of Joe LaPierre. When will this Stalin-esque spectacle of the public humiliation of Joe LaPierre come to an end? When he has been sent off to a re-education camp? Are we living in the United States in 2017 or in Red China during the Cultural Revolution? There are 10 Republican legislators in this body. Only 2 have opposed the censure. Where are the others? Can only 2 be found to resist intimidation and to stand by their fellow Republican? I trust the Republican legislators will withdraw their censure of Joe LaPierre. I trust they will reassert their independence and no longer be enthralled to the St. Lawrence County Democratic Committee, which has called for LaPierre's resignation, not merely his censure. I trust the Republican legislators will refuse to gratify the demands of the Democratic pressure group, Right to Power New York District 21. And I trust the legislators will resist the baneful influence of any Democratic Party-controlled newspaper or radio station or television news channel. The days of Republicans in sackcloth and ashes constantly begging for forgiveness from the Democrats for sins the Republicans never committed should come to an end.
Okay, thank you. Next up after Ms. LaPierre is Mary Hamilton.
I'm Bridget LaPierre, and I wanted to speak tonight and explain that I feel this situation with Joel is filled with hypocrisy and people who are speaking out in response to what they perceived as racism and bigotry. These same people have spewed much more hateful, vulgar comments and threats at Joel LaPierre in an effort to teach what? Love, compassion, tolerance? Such messages prove only one thing, and that's the fact that Joel LaPierre is being made a scapegoat for the Democratic Party's frustration and anger at our current administration. They are using this man to further their own political agenda. They know it, and we know it. They say shame on him, I say shame on them. The legislature has acted. They voted to censure Joel. He released a public apology 3 days prior to January 23rd, which the media chose to ignore for 3 days. He has stated he was wrong and would speak differently in the future. It's hypocritical for the people here to call for Joel's resignation because of their deep concern for the county and his leadership abilities. If they were truly concerned for the county, why did the crowd exit immediately following the censure on January 23rd? How many people stayed for the Finance Committee meeting to hear about the finances of the county, to learn what jobs may or may not be cut, to learn where their tax dollars are going, what programs may or may not be funded? Instead, the people who are so concerned about this county left with no interest in what's actually happening here. They say shame on him, I say shame on them. There is real work to be done here. Joel has sacrificed time with his family and business to serve his constituents. As legislator, Joel has been described as acting fairly, respectfully, intellectually, and I quote, as a gentleman. He is passionate and decisive. He was elected by people who actually know him and respect him. This sensationalism to one Facebook post is a waste of time and effort. This response does one thing only, and that is to strengthen Joel LaPierre's resolve to remain in his position. I would ask the legislature to reconsider the censure.
Thank you, Ms. LaPierre. Next up is Mary Hamilton, and after that is Daniel Leader.
Thank you, Chairman Akers and the board for the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm one of the constituents Mr. LaPierre represents, and I'm here because I can't stay silent on the issue of his censorship. I'm here for my grandson, who's a high school student involved in speech and debate and student congress with a keen interest in the workings of government and the political system. I'm here because he needs to know there's a legislative body in St. Lawrence County that values the positions they hold and understands the far-reaching effects their words and actions can have. I'm here to voice my objection to Mr. LaPierre's words and actions and urge this legislative body to at the very least censure him. What started out as an unacceptable rant on a private Facebook page eventually made its way to the January 24th edition of one of the country's largest circulated newspapers, and in my opinion only served to disgrace the North Country. In addition, an Albany publication entitled Winners and Losers picked up the story and said the following: after being censured by the St. Lawrence County Legislature, the lawmaker issued an apology calling the dust-up a learning experience. Indeed, the incident shows that no matter how small a role in government, your words matter and may end up kissing your career goodbye in national or even global ridicule if they're not chosen wisely. Mr. LaPierre may have started his political career with good intentions, but his Facebook comments have, in my opinion, called into question his real motive and the quality of his decision-making skills. By the age of 47, life experiences would hopefully have informed him about taking the high road, even when your true feelings are otherwise. If in fact he chooses to remain on the board to fulfill his term of office, I hope Mr. LaPierre decides to work on issues that really matter to the 4th legislative district he represents. And while he's doing so, he might think about the words of author Grenville Kaiser: by constant self-discipline and self-control, you can develop greatness of character. I hope he and the rest of the board continues to think about his effect on the next generation, their opinion of our local government, and the desire they may have to run for public office. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, after Ms. Leader, is Sarah Schaaf.
Good evening. To those who have been given much, much is required. Those of us who give our lives in service to others are called to a higher standard of responsibility. I am very grateful for the service of Joel LaPierre to his county, to his community, and his family. In this frustrating time in our political culture, I'm here to remind that none of us, whether public servants or not, are not defined by one action, one regret, one mistake, one misdeed, or one word regrettably spoken or written. Joel is no racist. He is a loving father of 3 very intelligent, very compassionate, and totally selfless daughters who give of themselves genuinely to everyone they meet. They are very much like their parents. He supports our communities in many ways, all of its citizens, and that makes St. Lawrence County a place that we are very proud to call home. I'm saddened by the vulgar and threatening words that the LaPierre family has had to endure since this incident became public. We are all much more than the words that we misspeak or miswrite. We all want to be heard. We all want to be listened to and respected. It is my hope in speaking for Joel tonight that he be known for all the fairness and goodness that he serves everyone that he comes in contact with and serves and works for to improve their lives. It is my hope that the board accept the censure as it is and do not move in any way to some of the public outcry for resignation, for I truly believe that Joel would not have said, written what he did, although frustrated, He's learned a lesson, and he's a wonderful man. Thank you.
Okay. I think we're starting to run quite a bit over time, so we want to be careful. You're going to have to hold that sign up so that people know so they can see better. After Ms. Schaaf is Benjamin Landry. Ms. Schaaf. Am I pronouncing that correct? Schaaf? Schaaf. Okay.
Thank you. About 100 years ago, my Jewish family lived in a small village of Jabin in Belarus. My family loved their village. They loved their neighbors. But every Easter, they were required to stay inside their home, the doors locked, the windows closed, the house dark, while their Christian neighbors paraded in the streets. The day before and the day after, they'd be at the market with these same neighbors, saying hello, maintaining some level of civility. These neighbors were often polite. My family would have described them as good people. They also sometimes set fire to the houses of Jewish families because they believed in the lies people in power told about the Jewish people. This is why my ancestors came to America, for a chance at a life of daily freedoms, including the freedom to worship as they wished without the fear of persecution. So I want to thank the legislators in this room who recognized that Mr. LaPierre must be held accountable for his Facebook post. The issue isn't that his comments were personally offensive, and the issue isn't that he was critical of another public figure. The issue is that Mr. LaPierre's comments are rooted in religious and racial intolerance, a belief system that is in direct opposition to our Constitution and our American values of liberty, the reasons my ancestors came to this country. As an elected official and a leader of this community, Mr. LaPierre is a representative of our democratic system and values, and while it is true that a key principle of our system is the freedom of speech, the First Amendment does not apply to elected officials in the same way as it does to American citizens. Prior Supreme Court cases have ruled that government agencies can sanction a member for speech that is inconsistent with the role of that institution. And so I thank the legislature. In voting for censure, the legislators acknowledge that LaPierre's comments are that they are inconsistent with the role of this board. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Schaaf. Benjamin Landry is next. After Mr. Landry is Mark Dinashi.
First, I wish to thank the board for indicating during its proceedings of January 23rd that it intends to censure Legislator Joel LaPierre for his remarks, which have clouded our county with a pall of bigotry and have brought unwelcomed national attention. Because of Mr. LaPierre's remarks, the North Country looks like a place where people who perhaps do not look like Mr. LaPierre and who perhaps do not worship, or who perhaps worship differently than Mr. LaPierre, would not be welcome. Additionally, Mr. LaPierre has shown himself susceptible to conspiracy theories, which would seem to preclude an ability to dispassionately assess the difficult, multifaceted matters involved in governing a community. This is unfortunate indeed, and I believe that the board recognizes this and will follow through with rendering beneficial censure. But while the board will do its part, it remains for Mr. LaPierre to do his part. Mr. LaPierre eventually issued a qualified apology for his statements, not for their content, but for their phrasing, an important distinction. And while the sincere apology might suffice for a youthful indiscretion, one will not suffice for an adult legislator supported by public tax dollars. Public officials must be held to a higher standard. If Mr. LaPierre truly wishes to take responsibility for his actions, he should choose the one honorable course of action remaining to him and step down. He should know that if he fails to do so, his future work on this board will be clouded in disrepute. How, for instance, could he be trusted to think impartially with respect to social services? And, lest Mr. LaPierre think that he is being singled out, he should know that a number of public servants have been asked to resign for similar prejudicial statements on social media, including Mayor Beverly Whaling of Clay, West Virginia, Teacher Trent Bennett of Melbourne, Arkansas, and County Development Officer Pamela Taylor of Clay, West Virginia. I have no doubt that resigning will be personally difficult, but in doing so, Mr. LaPierre can begin to move on, and this county, this place we love, can begin to heal.
Thank you. Mark Dinashi. Next up after him will be James Skelton.
Thank you. While I personally have always felt safe in the North Country, I know not just one, but several people, one a very close friend, who've been terrified to be alone in their own homes here, and who have received hate-filled letters threatening them and their families because of the color of their skin. Sentiments such as those expressed by Mr. LaPierre, and the silence of many who do not understand why they are a big deal, might lead my friends to believe that their neighbors are capable of such acts. Please let us demonstrate how wrong that would be. At the previous committee meeting, Mr. Forsythe said he thought that the only winners in this situation were the media. It doesn't have to be that way. We can make winners of all of us. Please take that opportunity seriously. Beyond the necessary censure, perhaps Mr. LaPierre and other legislators can participate in some dialogues with constituent groups who may have felt offended or even terrified by his words. Maybe we can extend this kind of dialogue to include constituent groups who support Mr. LaPierre and who don't understand why his comments are any worse than casual criticisms of our current president. We don't necessarily have to come to agreement, but I believe in the power of North Country neighborliness to bring us together in areas where we might share surprising common ground. Several of us here are members of SURGE, showing up for racial justice, and that may be a place to begin looking for dialogue opportunities. There may be other options as well. I hope you all, not just Mr. LaPierre, but the county legislature as a whole will seriously take this under consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. After next up is James Skelton, and then we have Mike Caponino. Go ahead, Mr. Skelton.
Good evening. I'm James Skelton from Watertown, New York. I'm here to support Joe LaPierre. In my opinion, he is no racist. He's a good man. And many things led up to tonight. We have a president who claims he's a Christian, but he chided Americans for relying on their Bibles and their guns. We had an attorney general who called Americans cowards on race. We had an unconstitutional health care law passed with not one Republican vote, with a deciding vote cast by a Democrat who on behalf of his state accepted a massive kickback for his yes vote. People peacefully demonstrated against that law, and they were called racist, fearmongers, and bigots. Those same constitutionalists criticized the same president for writing his own laws and ignoring others, and again, were called racist for it. In the wake of an expanding Middle Eastern war that has reached our shores in our nation, our former president claimed that climate change was our #1 national security threat. Recently, a famous singer proclaimed before 650,000 people in a national audience that she's had many times thought about blowing up the White House. And she was applauded by most of the people we lovingly call the left. After putting up with these things and more debt and other things for 8 years, you propose to censor a legislator for exercising his First Amendment rights? For shame. Do I have to remind you that this is still America? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Skelton. Mike Capolino. After that is Ginger Story Welch. Mike.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, board members. My name is Mike Capolino. I am the supervisor in the town of Fowler, which is part of Mr. LaPierre's district. I've known Mr. LaPierre and his family for many years. Mr. LaPierre is not a racist. He's not a bigot, and he's not a hateful person. Mr. LaPierre is, however, a human being, and as such, is subject to human feelings flaws, and faults. As a great man once said, let any one of you who is without sin be the first to cast the stone. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. After Ms. Welch is Charles Newbine, I believe. Go ahead, Ms. Welch.
Thank you. It brings me no pleasure to address this body about censuring one of its own members. But as a retired teacher with 37 years in the classroom, I come concerned about the youngest, most impressionable American citizens, our children. In the first days after the 2016 presidential election, the Southern Poverty Law Center administered an online survey to K-12 educators across our nation. Over 10,000 educators responded. The survey data indicate that the results of the election are having a profoundly negative impact on schools and students, including an increase in political bullying, which has manifested locally. 90% of educators report that school climate has been negatively affected, and most of them believe it will have a long-lasting impact. I hold you as elected officials to the same standards I hold myself as a teacher, to be a good role model for our most impressionable American citizens, something Mr. LaPierre failed to do when he made his post. In addition to concerns about what I see as un-American attitudes of racism and bigotry expressed in the post, I add the concern of competency. I taught my 4th graders to ask questions such as, is this true? Where did you get this information? And they were introduced to the term credible source of information. While I did not expect 10-year-olds to master these skills, I do expect elected officials who make important decisions to have adequate critical thinking and research skills to differentiate between fact and fiction. That Mr. LaPierre would continue to believe rumors about Obama's birth in the face of credible evidence to the contrary reveals a lack of intellectual scrutiny unfitting for an elected official. Thank you.
Thank you. After Mr. Newbine, we have Richard Paleo.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Board of Legislators. My name is Charles Newbine, and I have been completely enthralled since early January by the same thing that many of you have been enthralled by, and the reason why we find ourselves here tonight. Maybe we aren't here for the same cause, but we're here to voice our concerns nonetheless. I can only assume that many of you here had to ask yourself whether or not you were going to speak here tonight. Some of you had no reservations about speaking, while others had to dig down deep to muster up the courage to do so. After this heavily covered story in the press and social media, I felt compelled to speak. I felt compelled to tell you why I'm here tonight. I'm here to listen, to understand, and to ask questions. You could say I'm here for the voice of the minority, the same voice that could tell you things about Legislator LaPierre that you probably don't know. First of all, there's no one in this room tonight that knows what Mr. LaPierre said was wrong more than Mr. LaPierre himself. No one knows more than Mr. LaPierre that what he said was wrong, period. After we leave here tonight, the only thing you will truly know about Mr. LaPierre is that what he said on social media that night was wrong. Well, let me tell you about the Joel LaPierre that I know. I can tell you how Mr. LaPierre employs a large number of local people at a very good wage at his place of business. Also, how this place of business provides a service to homes, schools, military bases, police barracks, correctional facilities, and many others to ensure the safety of its visitors and at the rate it keeps spending at a minimum. I can tell you about the charities Mr. LaPierre donates to both locally and nationally, how he and his wife have raised a beautiful family of 3, how he has affected the lives of so many without asking or expecting anything in return. So I pose a question to the legislative body. Will you stand for the First Amendment of the Constitution of the United States that you swore on the Bible to protect by exercising that same constitutional liberty? Will you listen to the people and finally cast your vote in favor of the masses that are exercising the same liberty that your fellow legislator did? Good luck. God bless. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Newbine. Next up is, am I pronouncing it right? Paleo?
Paleo.
Paleo, I'm sorry. And then Matt Nair is next up.
Yes, I'm Richard Paleo. Thank you for extending time beyond the 30 minutes. I'm here to talk about the industrial wind. We need some kind of county-wide legislation to have 1 mile wide setbacks on any industrial wind projects. also attention by the county legislature for potential conflicts of interests at the town board level. This seems very likely to occur as the wind farms are sited in those districts. Please legislate and help control industrial wind for the health and safety of the citizens of the county. Thanks very much. And I'm also curious why the media is not covering industrial wind. It seems to be absent, especially this current project. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mr. Little. After Mr. Minair is Anna Sorensen.
Thank you. I'm new here, and in my 5 months in Potsdam, I have met so many generous, warm, and passionate, and loving, and honest people, and that's what the North Country is to me. And Mr. LaPierre's Facebook outburst completely contradicts this image, and the news rightly picked it up. And as a result, his story has tarnished the entire image of the North Country. Anyone from the area can tell you that LaPierre's behavior is not representative, and it is a shame that LaPierre's behavior has become our representative. Mr. LaPierre took steps towards saving face by releasing a public apology, but his apology doesn't make me think that he has really put in the reflection needed to earn back my trust. His original statement suggested a deep-seated mindset beneath the surface that has not yet been fully routed. For instance, he suggests that, and I quote, "In the future, I will express my opinions in a more suitable manner. I struggle to grasp how one could suitably voice the opinion that, to paraphrase, Barack Obama is a big-eared Kenyan Muslim, all whilst threatening to deport his family. I do not believe that Mr. LaPierre is done redeeming the image of the North Country. Therefore, like Mark, I call on Mr. LaPierre to take additional steps to repair our reputation. First, I would ask him to author an editorial explaining specifically why his statements were inappropriate and based on falsehoods. Second, I would ask him to become a solution to the problem by actively joining local anti-racist organizations such as SURGE and sponsoring educational events via the legislature if possible. And lastly, I would ask that if he is unwilling to actively resist racism, I would ask that he resign his position so that it can be replaced by someone that is willing to make the North Country great again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Minair. Next up, Anna Sorensen will be followed by Matt. I'm going to mess this up. Caratanuto.
Hello, my name is Anna Sorensen. Thank you for allowing me to speak and for all of us to speak. I want to talk today as a taxpaying member of this community who has a child in our local school. Many of us are parents, and one thing that we have in common is that we want our children to be successful, to be engaged citizens that bring us, their parents, our communities, our county pride. The fact is, we are living in an increasingly diversified world. If we want our children to function, to compete in, and contribute to that world as successful adults, they need to learn to appreciate and respect differences among people. When our elected leaders use racist rhetoric, the messages that our children receive is that there is something wrong with having different physical features, different religions, different customs, etc. And those messages are profoundly hurtful, not only to those who are perceived as being different, but to all of our children. They will be disadvantaged in the long run by this kind of thinking, because they will not be prepared to engage in a world made up of and enriched by a diversity of people and ideas. Our children need leaders who, no matter their differences in terms of political ideas or policy preferences, will set an example by rejecting racist rhetoric and engaging in the democratic process in a way that demonstrates respect for difference and a commitment to including all of their constituents. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Was I even close with your last name?
You did a pretty good job, so thank you.
Okay, next up is, after Matt, is Aaron Corbine.
So, as a resident of Canton in St. Lawrence County, let me start by thanking you for your service and commitment to the county and your role as a county legislators. Political engagement and service in the work of our shared home county is something I respect and value. As a public servant, one must put their community first and always strive to protect the freedom and safety of those you represent, regardless of the various identities and beliefs we all embody. Balancing personal opinion and community service is difficult work, but I believe in accountability. I also believe I have the duty to speak out as a resident of St. Lawrence County and as an educator. Thus, I'm right to request your resignation, Mr. LaPierre, due to the incendiary and racist comments you made on January 5th via Facebook. As a teacher and scholar of history and African studies with more than 15 years of professional experience, your comments reflect an acceptance of proven falsehoods and a perpetuation of racist stereotypes about the world's second largest continent, as well as a global religion of over 1.6 billion followers, nearly a quarter of the world's population. These are beliefs and values I find abhorrent, and as one of the major learning goals in my teaching is to dispel stereotypes of Africa, which have fueled the Obama and Kenya birther falsehoods and racist political rhetoric in the U.S. for nearly a decade. I appreciate your public apology to the Watertown Times, but I was very disappointed to witness your silence on the matter at the Finance Committee of January 23rd. The only conclusion I can draw from this silence is that your January 5th statement is indicative of a wider prejudice and acceptance of proven falsehoods. I ask you to resign from your position out of respect to St. Lawrence County, the legislator you serve, and the community outreach you sparked. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Ms. Corbine, and then followed by David Duff.
Hello, everyone. As a student here in Canton, I attend school, work, and live alongside people of color, people of different religious backgrounds, and people from different countries on a daily basis. That includes Black students, Muslim students, and students hailing from countries in Africa, including Kenya. These people all call St. Lawrence County their home. And as a legislator in this county, Mr. LaPierre, you have been elected to represent all of these people. The post on your Facebook page was unquestionably racist, Islamophobic, and xenophobic. Your comments were offensive and extremely inappropriate. Many of your colleagues cited your First Amendment right to express your opinions freely, and they're not wrong. By our Constitution, you are allowed to spew lies and hate, which is exactly what you did. But let's not forget that the right to free speech was instated so that the government could not arrest us for what we say. It doesn't mean that in 2017 we are obligated to sit back as our elected officials, whom are expected to behave in a professional manner, emit racist comments on Facebook. The First Amendment allows you the right to speak freely, but make no mistake, it does not shield you from criticism or consequences for what you decide to say. Some of your fellow legislators have expressed that this is a non-issue relative to other impending problems. Mr. Forsyth commented that there are bigger fish to fry. That's an easy position to take when you're not directly impacted by racism. I can assure you, to residents of St. Lawrence County who are of color, who are Muslim, who are immigrants, and all others who simply have a moral compass, this is a big fish. Racism within my home county's government is something that I will not stand for. Mr. LaPierre, I have written this letter today to ask that you voluntarily resign from your position as a St. Lawrence County legislator. I hope that you will show respect for our county and our district and resign from your position without creating further controversy and embarrassment. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Corbine. Mr. Duff. And then followed by Mr. Duff is a name that I cannot read. I think is it a Lowell Tile?
Louise.
Okay, Louise, I'm sorry. Okay, Mr. Duff.
Thank you for the opportunity. My name is David Duff. I live in the town of Home. Joel is my representative on this board. I think it is imperative that you censor Mr. LaPierre. If you don't, I think the speculation as to why you don't will be in the main negative. That being said, I think we've gotten our pound of flesh. Mr. LaPierre has undergone a month of public shaming. I'm familiar with public shaming. It is a lesson that will either make you stronger or will beat you down. I hope this board will give Mr. LaPierre the opportunity to redeem himself. He is a valued member of his community, as you have heard. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Duff. And I'm sorry, Louise, what is your last name?
It's Tyler.
Okay.
Tyler, T-Y-O.
And then after her is Nick Folino.
I'm here this evening in solidarity with several speakers who came before me and asking and demanding Mr. LaPierre's resignation from this legislative body. I've been an educator in one of the local college towns, and prior to that, as a graduate student, I ran diversity awareness education in our K through 12 systems and worked closely with several college constituents. I have seen the tears of many of our students of color face racism, not just here in the North Country, but in Brooklyn, New York, Manhattan. I think several people in the audience might be misinformed about what the definition of racism is. It's a systematic social construct that takes people who are in power, i.e. the white dominant power in America right now, our majority, and looks to race and oppress groups. And those terms, those words written on Mr. LaPierre's Facebook page are clearly racist, Islamophobic, xenophobic, intolerant. And as someone who's been doing this work for almost 20 years, if you save face and own you made a mistake, which in the previous weeks Mr. LaPierre did, there's still lessons to be learned, there's still education. And I think by resigning, there can be an opportunity, as it's been mentioned, to join the local social justice advocacy groups and learn, because all ignorance is lack of knowledge. And I think these phrases and this behavior proves beyond a reasonable doubt that Mr. LaPierre needs some education. I will end with I'm debating on whether to end with another Martin Luther King quote or a quote by our former First Lady, Michelle Obama. She said, when they take the low road, we take the high road. And I don't know who they are, but I would like to think that Mr. LaPierre would want to take the high road tonight and humbly resign his position. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tile. After Mr. Flavinio is Nicole Goffin.
Right. I'll take off my hat. I have really bad hair, so forgive me. So first off, I want to start with a quote just from the post. I'm sure you've heard it before. Just remember, keep poking the bear, and we will pack you, Moshelle, the kids, mother-in-law, and anyone else related to you, and send you all on a one-way trip to Kenya, where you were born. It's really poetry, to be honest. But I just want to remind you, you felt the backlash from that statement. You felt the backlash from this county, from the state, from the country. So before you make another statement like that, I want to remind you, if you keep poking at the bear, we're going to help you pack all your stuff out of your office right back to your house, because that is unacceptable. Thank you.
Okay, after Ms. Gotham is Dave Bradford.
As a local resident of Fowler, New York, I have been appalled by the racist statements that have been made by Joel LaPierre. So therefore, tonight, I am here to stand in solidarity with those calling for the resignation of Mr. LaPierre. As a public representative, what he says reflects the people that he represents. Whether he makes public posts, such as the one creating the current issue at hand, this comes back to represent the people that reside in his district. The ideals that he has expressed in the public sphere do not coincide with the ideals of many of my friends, my family, my neighbors, and myself. The North Country has always been home to me, and I've never once felt unsafe here. And throughout my life, I've grown to love the area so much that I've decided to continue my education through the next 4 years studying at St. Lawrence University. Since his statement, it has resulted in fear becoming embedded in many individuals that I know, whether they be in my hometown or on the campus that I currently study on. Although Mr. LaPierre has come forward and apologized publicly for his comments, as I said before, these ideals do not represent the people residing here as a whole, therefore meaning that he is not accurately representing us, and I believe that he should voluntarily resign his position as a St. Lawrence County legislator. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bradford, and then Stephen Casper, I believe, is next.
Thank you, David Bradford, Potsdam. Thank you, Chairman and the Board of Legislators, for extending the time tonight to listen to your constituents. Didn't plan on speaking, but again, I just want to be counted in support of your resolution, censure of Joel LaPierre. Hate speech has consequences. Whether you're talking about the consequences of the increase in violence against the targets of that hate speech, it is statistically verified by science, and if there's any problems with your role understanding science in this body, which I have no reason to suspect at the moment, I'll do that. But in terms of then what is clear to me, very clear-cut decision you need to make, yes, there has to be a consequence to this hate speech, and you will have an impact beyond tonight. We will not necessarily be able to measure it in terms of, heaven forbid, any type of true violence in this community, but there are other types of consequences of hate speech that I am sure that your censure tonight, voting for censure, would probably help ameliorate other types of additional hate speech and other conflicts in this community. You can have a real impact with your vote tonight. I will leave it to the communities that elected the representative to see whether or not he should resign. I will be interested in paying attention to that debate to learn something more about my neighbors in this community.
Thank you, Mr. Bradford. Mr. Casper, and he will be followed by Jennifer Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, the body. My name is Stephen Casper. I am thinking about this issue from Potsdam and Canton perspective, which is a little bit more locally than the perhaps entirety of St. Lawrence County. And I would like to point out that in a very real sense, for those of us who live in these communities, Mr. LaPierre has jeopardized our incomes. For those of us who work in the universities or depend upon the universities to provide us with our wherewithal, his remarks could be construed as driving away our customers. I don't like to think of students as customers, but you might think of them that way. There are thousands of institutions of higher education in the United States from which students all over this country, as a matter of fact, all over this world, can choose. So when we talk about local institutions of higher education that employ people who work in them as staff, as janitors, as faculty, and we can fill in many, many other divisions of labor there, we look at a circumstance in which Mr. LaPierre's remarks could push those customers away. Now, no one could actually sit down and measure that. No one has measured that. But I think in a very real sense, there probably are 6 to 10 to 15, maybe 50 people who are contemplating coming to the universities in this area who are no longer going to do that because of the national visibility of these remarks. I cannot recall having done anything to hurt Mr. LaPierre's business. I wonder why he is hurting ours. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Casper. Ms. Mitchell, and followed by Alex McKinnon.
I've lived in the county for 15 years. I'm a professional and educator, a homeowner, a volunteer. I really appreciate the board for censuring Mr. LaPierre. I think you're stepping up to send a reassuring message that his threatening speech does not represent you. And I believe that Mr. LaPierre's resignation would reinforce that message. You probably know that all the North Country counties, like nearly all counties in the state, are losing population. Since 2010, our county has lost over 3,000 people who moved to other states. Around 1,000 people moved in through foreign immigration, and about 1,000 more were born here. So immigrants, including Muslims and Africans, already have a role in our county, helping us to sustain a viable population, important businesses and services, and enrollment at the colleges, as the previous speaker said. All that, in turn, fuels economic activity. Mr. LaPierre's words could actually hold our county back and drive away the partners we need just when we need to become more broadly welcoming, as we struggle with losing population, high poverty, and a shrinking economy. Today, when I Googled St. Lawrence County, New York racism, the story of his speech made up 4 of the 10 hits on the first page of results. His words publicly send threatening messages to professionals working and raising families here, to businesses that might want to bring new employees here, to students at universities here who might consider staying on and making a life here, to their high schools and families back home who might encourage more people to come here. He participated fully in hateful speech that serves to rile up racist, anti-Muslim, and anti-immigrant feelings. It's not just inappropriate, it's reckless. We need to work together to build a viable future for our county, and I hope that Mr. LaPierre will take all these consequences seriously and resign. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mitchell. Mr. McKinnon? Before Mr. McKinnon gets up, is there anyone that would like to speak that has not signed in? If you, okay. You're next, sir. Go ahead, Alex.
Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Alex McKinnon. I'm a resident of the town of Fowler and a constituent of Mr. LaPierre. I cannot condone the comments that Mr. LaPierre recently made regarding President Obama. They were disrespectful of the office of President of the United States, regardless of political affiliation or philosophy. But I can also understand the frustration that has caused this kind of remark by Mr. LaPierre and others. I can understand the frustrations of hundreds of people in St. Lawrence County who work hard with their hands. Tradesmen who with skills to create a building that is square and plumb, welders who can assemble 2 pieces of metal with absolute precision, truck drivers who can back a 53-foot trailer into a spot with only 2 inches to spare first time every time. Mechanics who understand the operation of complex machines and know what to do when they stop working. Miners who can dynamite and blast rock exactly where needed. Laborers who do the heavy work that others cannot. I can understand the frustration of hundreds of people who used to work in the mines in Governor. Hundreds of people who used to work at the paper mill in Newton Falls. Hundreds of people who used to work at General Motors in Messina. The frustrations of hundreds of people who used to work as loggers in the woods. The frustrations of hundreds of people who wake up in the morning and wonder if their job will be the next one to move to Mexico or China. The frustrations of hundreds of people who wear blue collar to work, whose hands are calloused and rough, or maybe have the hint or the smell of the barn. The issues of global warming and gay rights, where men feel where they should go to the bathroom, immigrants, are all very important. However, the frustration comes when these social concerns are perceived to be more important and receive more attention than those who are impacted by plant closings, overseas job losses, and worry if they're going to be next. These are the kind of frustrations that Mr. LaPierre has felt. I've known Mr. LaPierre most of his life. I know his family, I know his mother, I know his father, I know his wife, I know her mother, her father, and her grandparents. Mr. LaPierre is not a racist, he's not a xenophobe or any other phobe. He said something he shouldn't have said, he knows it. As my friend David Duff just said, you've extracted your pound of flesh. Shall we lynch him on the pole out here and drag his body through the streets? I don't think so. I hope that you'll have the courage to table this issue and do what's right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McKinnon. We have a young gentleman. You'll have to state your name, sir.
Gabriel Rutherford.
Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Gabriel Rutherford. I'm a student at Madrid Waddington Central School. I like politics. It's pretty rare for a kid my age. The majority of my peers do not agree with my hobby. But they did care about what Mr. LaPierre had to say. It was actually kind of outstanding to me that that these kids cared that Mr. LaPierre was saying these racist comments. I felt the need to come here and speak about it tonight. I'm in speech and debate. One of the recent topics in Lincoln-Douglas debate was whether or not colleges should have the ability to censor what a college student has to say. And right now they do, and it's about hate speech. I found that pretty interesting that in the county legislature, we would debate whether or not a legislator should or should not be censored when college students are censored every day for hate speech that they say. Why should it be any different? Whether you're a Republican or a Democrat sitting on this legislature, it really shouldn't matter. The facts are that what Mr. LaPierre said were wrong. They did not have any evidence that supported them, and I just don't see how they benefit the county or how what he said represents the views of Hammond or Fowler. I don't see it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rutherford. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Yes, ma'am. Please state your name.
Jolene Caro Junigo. You had it very close to my husband's. Thank you all for the opportunity to speak tonight. One thing I want to bring to light, we have heard from a great deal of educators here in the community, and that's very important because the education system is one of our largest employers. However, our other largest employer is the healthcare field. I am in the healthcare field, and as a provider, I am held to the standard of caring for every individual who comes across my path without prejudice. And that is the kind of standard that we hold our legislators to and our government participants to. I ask that we do this for Mr. LaPierre and for everybody who's elected to a position. If I were to treat any of my patients with any kind of prejudice, I would surely not be employed anymore. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Yes, sir.
My name is Andre Lynch.
How do you spell your last name, Andre?
Common spelling Lynch.
Okay. Go ahead, sir.
Hey, how you doing? So the rhetoric on Mr. LaPierre's Facebook. So I don't know if you can tell, but I was born black, and so the rhetoric spewed from his Facebook page is something that is very, very common to me. Things that I've heard before. Whether that's go back to Africa, mind you, my family's from West Indian descent, but go back to Africa, or you don't belong here, or just random things that come out of people's mouths that really don't know you and just want to say something hateful to you rather than getting to know you or getting to understand your culture. But I feel like, not just 2017, but just me in general, like, it's difficult to stay quiet now. Like I can't stay quiet walking into Buster's while everyone stops eating and looks at me while I'm walking in. Can't stay quiet while I'm, in Rite Aid and people follow me through the aisles and ask, no, do you need help with? No, I've been here about 40, 50 times within the last year. Like I know exactly where the toothpaste is, but thank you. I just can't stay quiet when the leadership in the county feels like it's okay to think and feel differently about people that look like me. It's despicable, it's completely unacceptable, and I believe that the legislature should definitely move forward with the censure. Plain and simple, he's got to go. He might not be a bad person whatsoever, but he needs to pay for his actions and his inactions. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lynch. Anyone else? Okay, so this concludes our citizens' participation. I want to thank everyone for being courteous and civil. I wrote down some things for different speakers here in the North Country. You are safe, you are welcome, you are valued, and we celebrate the diversity. Immigration has been the backbone of this country, and it'll continue to be so. Everybody in here is an immigrant. You don't have to go back very many generations, 2 or 3 generations, maybe even 1, or maybe you're first here. Right now, things are so difficult politically. We have huge differences and strong differences amongst families, but in many ways we're the same. We value our families, we value our friends, we demonstrate compassion for those in need. We're North Country friendly, we're generous, we're warm, helpful and considerate. So that concludes. Okay, so we'll go with the rest of our meeting. So we have the presentation of resolutions. Mr. Timmer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I offer a resolution censuring a St. Lawrence County Legislator.
Okay, we have a motion, second by Mr. Fay. Mr. Perkins. Any discussion? Mr. Forsythe.
It's not working. I'd like to call the question.
Okay, we have a motion to call the question. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, on the, Mr. Bagwin, on the resolution for the motion to call the question, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, so on the resolution censuring St. Lawrence County Legislator, Mr. LaPierre, all those in favor say aye. No.
Could I ask a roll call vote?
Yes, sir. Roll call vote. Yep.
Hooper?
No.
Forsythe?
No.
Lightfoot?
Yes.
LaPierre?
Same.
Leader?
Yes.
Denisha?
Yes.
Perkins?
Yes.
Akers?
Yes.
Fay?
Yes.
Timmerman?
Yes.
Colbert?
Yes.
Burke?
Yes.
Arquette?
Yes.
Paquin?
Yes.
Bell?
Yes.
12 yes, 2 no.
Okay, the motion is carried. Legislator Joel LaPierre, you have been censured by the board. The censure indicates the board's displeasure of your aforementioned conduct. The censure is a warning expressing the disapproval of the members with the behavior you have displayed. Mr. Hooper.
Mr. Chairman, I offer a resolution authorizing the planning department to carry out fee for service work through memorandums of understanding for projects under $10,000 and move for adoption.
Is there a second? Mr. Arquette, is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Mr. Hooper.
Mr. Chairman, I